What defines a weapon? Is it the cold steel forged in fire? Is it the ancient magic binding a demon to a blade? Or is it the hand that wields it? In the violent history of Runeterra, there have been many warriors, but only one has dared to become the weapon itself. Shieda Kayn walks a path that would shatter the minds of lesser men. He's a child of two empires, born in the blood of Noxus, but forged in the shadows of Ionia. To his enemies, he's a blur of lethal precision. To his master, Zed, he's a dangerous prodigy. But to himself, he's the only thing standing between the world and total annihilation. He carries a sentient scythe, a Darkin god warrior named Rhaast, that whispers promises of glory and threats of oblivion. They are locked in a struggle for control, a dance on the edge of a razor. Will Kayn master the beast, or will the beast consume the boy? This is the story of the Shadow Reaper. To understand the monster, we must first look at the boy. Shieda Kayn was not born into greatness. He was drafted into a nightmare. Under the iron rule of Borum Darkwill, the Noxian Empire was a machine that ran on conquest, and it was not picky about the fuel it consumed. The invasion of Ionia had stalled. The disastrous battle at the Placidium of Navori had turned a quick conquest into a humiliating stalemate. In response, the Noxian High Command, led by their most insidious tacticians, devised the strategy of pure cruelty. They turned the invasion into a war of attrition. They knew the Ionians possessed a fatal flaw: mercy. The warriors of the First Lands hesitated to strike down the innocent. Noxus exploited this hesitation by fielding child soldiers. Kayn was one of these children, barely old enough to lift a sword, yet forced into the vanguard of an imperial army. He was given a weapon he could hardly carry and told to march. The plan was simple and horrific. The Ionian defenders would pause before slaughtering children, creating an opening for the elite Noxian regulars to flank and massacre them. Kayn and his peers were not soldiers. They were bait. They were meat thrown into a grinder to jam the gears of Ionian morality. The destination was the Epple River and the province of Barl. The Noxian ships landed where the river bled into the sea. It was a gray, miserable day when Kayn stepped off the boat. Around him, other children cried for their mothers or froze in terror as the Ionian militia charged. But Kayn was different. Even at that tender age, something in him had already hardened. When the clash began, chaos erupted. The air filled with the screams of the dying and the clash of steel. Kayn looked at the heavy, rusted sword in his hands, a piece of junk given to him by a commander who expected him to die. He dropped it. It was useless. Instead, his eyes darted to the ground, finding a simple farmer's sickle dropped by a fleeing local. It was a tool meant for harvesting grain, but in Kayn's hands, it became something else. While his young comrades were cut down or fled into the tree line, Kayn charged. He didn't scream in fear. He fought with a cold, terrifying silence. He slashed at the legs of men 3 times his size. He moved with a ferocity that stunned both the Ionian defenders and the Noxian soldiers attacking from the flanks. He wasn't fighting for Noxus. He wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting because he refused to die. In that mud, amidst the carnage of the Epple River, the boy named Shieda Kayn died, and a survivor was born. He didn't know it yet, but he had just passed the first test of the shadows. The battle at Epple River was a massacre. Farmers, hunters, and even a few magical Vastaya were butchered by the Noxian trap. The river ran red for days. It took 2 days for the news of the slaughter to reach the southern provinces where the Order of Shadow was operating. Zed, the Master of Shadows, arrived at the scene expecting only to see the aftermath of another Noxian atrocity. He knew this region held no strategic value. This killing field was a message. Noxus would show no mercy. Zed walked among the corpses, his face hidden behind his mask, his heart hardened by years of war. But then he saw it, a glint of steel in the mud. There, sitting amidst the carnage, was a child. He couldn't have been more than 10 years old. He was covered in dried blood and filth, his knuckles white as he gripped a broken sickle. He pointed the jagged farming tool at the master of assassins, his hand trembling, not from fear, but from exhaustion and adrenaline. Zed stopped. He looked into the boy's eyes. He didn't see the tears of a victim. He saw a pain that far exceeded the boy's age, but burning beneath that pain was a fire of pure fury. It was the eyes of a warrior who had seen hell and decided to set up a throne there. This resilience was not something that could be taught in a dojo. It was raw, it was innate. Where others saw a discarded Noxian tool, Zed saw a weapon waiting to be sharpened. He saw a mirror of his own defiance. Zed extended a hand, not to comfort the boy, but to offer him a new life. He invited Kayn to join the Order of Shadow. Kayn accepted. He left the mud of Epole River and entered the hidden temples of Yanlei. Tradition in the Order dictated that an acolyte would spend years studying a single weapon, mastering its form and spirit. Kayn, however, had no patience for tradition. He mastered them all. Swords, spears, daggers, shurikens, they were all child's play to him. To Kayn, these were just tools. He realized a profound truth. He was the weapon. He viewed armor as a burden, a sign of weakness. Why wear steel when you can wrap yourself in shadows? He learned to merge with the darkness, moving through walls and appearing from the very ground to strike his enemies. His speed was unnatural. His stealth was absolute. He became the whisper in the dark that terrified the remaining Noxian invaders. As Kayn grew, so did his legend. But along with his skill grew a colossal arrogance. He began to believe that he wasn't just Zed's student. He was his successor, perhaps even his better. He looked at Zed and saw the past. When he looked in the mirror, he saw the future of Ionia. He believed he was destined to lead the Order of Shadow into a new age of supremacy. And it was this hubris that would lead him to his ultimate test. Arrogance is a dangerous guide, but for Kayn, it was the only compass he possessed. He believed there was no challenge he could not overcome, no power he could not tame. This belief was put to the test when a rumor reached the Order of Shadow. A weapon of ancient and terrible power had been discovered in Noxus. It was a Darkin weapon, a sentient artifact from a bygone age, housing the trapped soul of a god warrior. The weapon was being transported, and the Order needed to intercept it. The mission was clear: retrieve the weapon and prevent it from being used against Ionia's weary defenders. Most acolytes would have been terrified. The Darkin were known to corrupt and consume anyone foolish enough to touch them. But Kayn saw this not as a danger, but as his destiny. He volunteered without hesitation. He never questioned why Zed agreed to send him. Was it trust? Or was Zed testing to see if Kayn's ambition would finally be his undoing? Kayn traveled to the heart of the enemy territory. He infiltrated the Noxian convoy with ease, slaughtering the guards with his signature phantom movements. And then, he found it. It was a scythe. Massive, crimson, and pulsing with a malevolent heartbeat. An eye, unblinking and ancient, stared out from the hilt. This was Rhaast. The moment Kayn laid eyes on it, he heard the voice in his head. A deep, guttural growl that dripped with malice and mockery. The scythe demanded blood. It demanded a host. Any other member of the Order would have destroyed it immediately. That was the mandate. Darkin weapons were too dangerous to exist. But Kayn? Kayn smiled. He didn't see a curse. He saw power. He saw the final piece of his ascension. He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the cold metal, the corruption surged. It wasn't just magic, it was an invasion. Rhaast, the entity trapped within, tried to burrow into Kayn's flesh, to override his mind and take his body for its own. It was a sensation of burning agony, 1,000 needles piercing his soul. Rhaast had waited centuries for a host strong enough to wield him, a vessel to pilot so he could return to slaughtering the world. But Kayn did not break. He did not scream. He clamped his will down upon the weapon like a vice. He pushed back. "You are mine," Kayn whispered, not to the air, but to the god inside the steel. He did not destroy the scythe. He claimed it. He strapped it to his back and turned toward home. He had disobeyed the fundamental safety protocols of his order, but he didn't care. He returned to Ionia not just as a shadow assassin, but as the wielder of Rhaast. He believed he had done what no one else could. He had tamed the demon. Or so he thought. Kayn returned to the Order of Shadow, but he did not return alone. Every moment of every day is now a battle. The scythe is not a passive object. Rhaast is awake, and he is hungry. The physical corruption has already begun. Kayn's left arm and part of his torso are covered in a hard, red carapace, the visible sign of Wrath's influence creeping over his flesh. It is a terrifying symbiosis. When they fight, they are a whirlwind of death. Kayn uses his shadow magic to phase through reality, while Wrath's blade shears through armor and bone as if it were paper. They are more effective together than they ever could be apart. But this partnership is a lie. It is a slow-motion execution. Rhaast speaks to Kayn constantly. He taunts him, goads him into violence, urging him to give in to the bloodlust. "Let me in," the Darkin whispers. "Let me show you true power." Rhaast waits for a moment of weakness, a split second of hesitation, so he can fully consume Kayn's mind and body. If Rhaast wins, Shieda Kayn will cease to exist. His body will become a twisted avatar for the Darkin, a vessel for an apocalypse that will scour Runeterra. But Kayn is arrogant enough to believe he is winning. He treats Rhaast not as a partner, but as a battery. He draws upon the Darkin's power to fuel his own shadow techniques, intending to eventually scour the consciousness of Rhaast from the weapon entirely. His goal is to become the true shadow assassin, a being of such singular power that he will eclipse Zed and rule the Order himself. He walks through the halls of the temple, the eyes of the other acolytes tracking him with a mix of awe and terror. They see the red corruption on his skin. They hear the faint, maddening whispers that seem to emanate from the scythe. Zed watches him too, silent and calculating. Zed knows the risk. He knows that his star pupil is walking on the edge of a knife. Kayn is now returning to the heart of Ionia, intoxicated by his own potential. He believes his will is absolute. He believes he has turned a world-ending threat into a servant. But the tragedy of Kayn is that he is fighting a war on two fronts, against the enemies of Ionia and against the weapon in his hands. He is the ultimate gamble. Either he will purge the Darkin and become the greatest assassin in history, or he will fall, and his body will become the door through which a god of war re-enters the world. For now, the scythe swings, the shadows dance, and the boy from Noxus smiles, confident that he is the master of his fate. But in the reflection of the blade, a red eye is always watching, waiting for the one mistake that will end it all.